but
Sure.
you're good.
Julio,
What do we got tonight, Jack? We got one more Wednesday after tonight, and then we're done for the year.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Got quite a little rabbit hole to jump down tonight, because this is I didn't intend on it being this, but it's my Christmas special, because it just worked out that way. That's what the universe threw at me this week, and it's quite a weird little rabbit hole we go down to come back out at Christmas. So,
oh yeah,
it's very strange. We're going to be talking about the inner workings of the Illuminati and how that was targeted by the world's best remote viewing. And believe it or not, bankers don't control the world.
Reptilians do.
Oh, it's possible.
Oh, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry if I did a spoiler there. I get excited.
No, well, we're gonna talk about David Icke. He does have that reptilian view, and you know what? It was backed up by, strangely enough, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. So. But I do have my YouTube crew. I'm filming for them as well. That was well received last week, so it makes it easy to actually just filming on my phone. So
I noticed that, and it came out really well, and I added those into my filler stream so that they can get some folks can get some raw side of you. Where it's unclipped and they don't have to watch the whole stream to get to you, basically.
Yeah, I need to get a live feed link. Is it possible to put a live feed link down in the comments of my YouTube thing to direct people where to go for a live feed?
You can direct them to your website where you have a live feed, or you can direct them to mine where I have a live feed going on.
Sure. What is that website? Just holler it out.
Hold on here. I'll give that to you here in just a minute, because you're getting ready to go on air. I'll give that to you when we get on air. All right, Jack, you got 30 seconds. Well, less than that. Yeah, because here's your countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you are live and on the radio side right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, and we are broadcasting from 300 feet deep in an abandoned nuclear missile silo lost somewhere in the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Dakota Territories. And I am joined, as always, by the paranormal crime-fighting duo, Daisy and the Sundance Kid, and now the River Ranch Kitty. We call him River. He is our new rescue and working security with us here in the silo. So we've got 3 security guards now, and fear nothing and no one. Ferociousness up in here. So, but as usual, crazy week on the great space roller coaster that we call the Earth and the so-called materium of our event stream. And, this has been one of those weeks where I received a ton of so-called qualia from the universe. Qualia, as I've explained in past shows, it comes from the webbot, and it's this idea that the universe actually feeds us information through the materium, and that's part of the so-called self-revealing nature of the ontology of the universe. It's basically, the webbot argues that the universe ultimately is a self-revealing intelligence, and it reveals itself to the life forms that are contained within it through a number of mechanisms, and one of those mechanisms is known as qualia, and qualia is something that they think, well, certain scientists think they might be able to detect that in time, somewhere in the future, have a device that actually detects qualia, which is the manifestation of an event before it occurs in our event stream. That would be something. That would be cool. What a strange week, and what a strange rabbit hole I have for you guys tonight. There's going to be a couple of moments where I'm going to have to look something up for you guys here, because, well, I'll just summarize these two different messages that I came across, well, rediscovered this week. These are two things I had seen previously, and this week, a speech by Woodrow Wilson and a letter from medieval times kind of coincided with one another and pointed in the same direction that the famous group of remote viewers known as the Future Forecasting Group, headed by Dick Algeier, all pointed me in one direction. And then, lo and behold, Kevin Costner had his special on this week, the first Christmas, and all of those things kind of coincided together. So this is a weird rabbit hole. I'll presage this rabbit hole with the fact that, let me see if I can get here a little better. The fact that this is how the rabbit hole and the line of evidence for it lines up. Do I believe in it completely? I don't know, but I can tell you all of it lines up in a factual manner. It is an affront to a lot of people's belief systems, and that's okay, because you have to understand that they're the people I'm going to be discussing this evening, which is the Illuminati, hold the following beliefs I'm going to be throwing out there for you tonight, and we're going to discuss the actual inner working mechanisms of the Illuminati. How do they maintain control, really? What's that like? You know, what are the mechanics behind something like that? How does a body of initiates stretching back into ancient times utilize the power structures of today in order to maintain control all the way from ancient times to the present day, right? And that's something that the Future Forecasting Group has surgically targeted. And, Dick Algeier put out a video not too long ago talking about it. And it basically runs right into the origins of Christmas is a very small part of all of this, actually, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we get deeper down the hole. But it's very interesting that these remote viewers were able to kind of reach in and pick out a piece of the puzzle that seems to match all of this other research I've done over a 30-year period. Shout out to my YouTube crew before we get going. This will be the second week in a row I've done a behind the scenes film for you guys. If you want my YouTube channel, it's just under Jack Carey on YouTube. It's not monetized. I don't really, there's no advertising on there. They demonetized it a long time ago. And truth be told, I'm very surprised that that they even allow my content on there at all, given the topics and what we discuss. But hey, who am I and what do I know, right? So I debated about how to take you guys down this rabbit hole this evening. There's a lot of different fascinating angles that we can take, but what I'll do is we're going to start talking about how the mechanics operate according to the Farsight group. And then we're going to kind of reach back into ancient history, and I'm going to show you guys some interesting stuff, how that all ties together. But before we reach that main topic, we're going to, of course, touch upon cryptids and cryptos. So I talked last week about the new documentary American Bigfoot, produced by David Paulides and some other people, which is interesting. It's all about Bigfoot on the Navajo reservation, and I lived that reality. That I spent many years on those reservations chasing these creatures and collecting DNA from them, numerous footprints and other, material all the time. So, and that's all been documented in my book, Bigfoot Unleashed. And so I don't really need to watch the new documentary. I do think it's funny that the Bigfoot luminary in Bigfoot world, in those communities, his name is Steve Isdall. He is a YouTube channel too. You can check that out. He reads emails from people that claim to have had encounters, and he's got a huge following just from reading these emails, which I find interesting. But he's all mad about this new documentary that's out because it's kind of spoiling his own narrative that these things are somehow interdimensional in nature, because that's what the documentary says. Right. And I covered all that in the last broadcast. So the fact that all of these guys are saying that there is a weird sort of byproduct of the UFO phenomenon, and that appears to be cryptid animal activity, is just such a weird, thing to try to wrap your brain around and try to accept, but it is what it is. And we're trying our best as researchers to, eliminate the impossible, and whatever remains, however improbable, has to be the truth. And our job is to eliminate the impossible whenever and wherever we can. And hopefully that kind of leads us down the path of the truth, right? But I do find that infighting continues in the Bigfoot community. And that David Paulides has actually come out and said, yeah, I think there might be something interdimensional about these things. Well, that's what I wrote in Bigfoot Unleashed 20 years ago, when we had all these same experiences and found DNA which could not possibly be explained. And I talked about that in my book, and the fact that the DNA not only was just weird because the World Genetic Bank couldn't figure out who the paternal DNA belonged to, the maternal DNA, or the mother's lineage was Homo sapien, right? That's weird enough. But the fact that the World Genetic Bank had no record of what the paternal lineage could possibly be, they said it was impossible. But our geneticist who did the studying of the genetic samples from the Sasquatch Genome Project, who is Dr. Melba Ketchum, who was hung out to dry on Paulides' last interview with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. Shame on him, but whatever. But he admits to what he did, which was jumping the ship, like right as the sampling was being done, because he thought that the scientific community was going to basically cancel everybody involved with it, and so he quietly butted out of the whole thing before that became an issue for him, and he could sell books. So, it is what it is. We call balls and strikes. But anyway, it's interesting that they're coming to that conclusion. That's something that we had determined. There was just a paranormal aspect to the entire Bigfoot phenomenon that couldn't be explained away. It just can't be. And now we know that from the scientists involved at Skinwalker Ranch and with the Pentagon's program that was linked to Skinwalker Ranch, that they had other kinds of cryptid activity also occur. We know from their recent interviews, and I'm talking about like the Age of Disclosure documentary was out. The scientists on there were talking about how they actually went and interviewed people around the ranch up to like 2, 3, 4 miles out. And they discovered that all those people that lived in that area all through the Uinta Basin were having the same strange cryptid activity occur and the same UFO activity occur. So take that for what it is, right? Still have an itchy throat from getting over the flu, so I'll be drinking a lot of water during the show. But, so that's really where the Bigfoot community is right now. You have one group of people who are convinced it has to be just an animal, an undiscovered regular animal of some kind, and then you have guys like me on the other side that are saying, hey, no, we've been there, we've done that, we've been in the field for years, we had all the experiences, we had rocks thrown at us, we had them screaming at us, we picked up DNA, blood, skin, fur, that was all analyzed, we collected the footprints, we collected food they ate and left saliva deposits on, we did all of that. It's been done, right? But the results were so amazing, nobody wanted to believe them. So they continued to try to do the same thing that we already did. Why, I don't know, because now they're saying, oh, well, yeah, these new samples we have, kind of look like what they found way back when. Well, there's a reason for that. So, they do have amazing DNA, and the geneticists determined that the DNA had to be an artificial construct. In other words, it was so complex, and it appeared to have a type of aspect to it where it was literally evolving and changing right in front of these geneticists, and there was more than one, but what was weird was they found fused within the DNA all kinds of other strands of DNA from various species of animals that would give this particular creature certain abilities that these other animals would possess, right? It's like the ultimate chimera, and that's what I wrote in my book. And that it was done on such a scale that we could barely even dream of doing that kind of genetic work. True, we are doing chimera work in laboratories around the world. And we're fusing genes successfully from one species into another that would not normally be able to procreate between them. But nothing like what they were seeing, right? And there's a reason why these creatures can see in infrared light, and they can hear, parabolically, and they can see by, like a pair of binoculars from miles away, and they can smell you from miles away, and they can run 75 miles an hour over uneven mountainous terrain. There's a reason for all of that. The reason why is because they were artificially constructed to be able to have those abilities. For a purpose we're still yet to fully understand or determine. But there is a Paiute Indian tale that Paulides last week on Weaponized podcast also mentioned, and I talked about it in my book. I wonder where he got it from. But it mentions the fact that the Paiute Indians have a tale about some false moons that descended to the earth, and they released 3 crazy bears, as they refer to them, into the wilderness. And they were able to make friends with one of these crazy bears, and a pioneer actually got to see this creature, and it was a Bigfoot. So, and he talks about that, right? And that goes right back to what I talk about in my book, that these things were a genetic construction. It looks like, from what they were able to determine, the sequencing, if you want to call it that, of these creatures happened around 15,000 years ago. That was during what we call the Younger Dryas period on the Earth, and that's when a lot of, like, comets, and there was a lot of upheaval taking place on the Earth at that time. So, but that's Cryptid Corner for tonight, and cryptos have been amazing. Last week we talked about the cryptocurrency markets, and which are my new passion, and you're talking to somebody that came from the stock market over to cryptocurrencies, and other than a handful of stocks here or there, there's no reason to own equities, in my personal opinion, and I'm not a financial advisor whatsoever. In fact, if you take financial advice from me, you're insane, so don't do it. That being said, last week I also covered silver, and the fact that the web bot predicted silver would become unobtainium. So there you go, guys. It's I don't know what it was last week when I was talking about it, but it just closed right around, well, it never really closes because of overnight trading, but $62 or so was the last I saw it. And that was right before I came on the air. It was close to, it was like 61 and change, about to hit $62. 50 was when I started telling everybody about it, and I was like, looks like this is going to happen, and this prediction is going to come true. That was $12 an ounce ago, and there's no sign of it stopping. There's no sign that they're suddenly found a big deposit of silver they can get up out of the ground in less than 5 years. No, that's not going to happen. And the London metals market is really, at this stage, it's just a big giant smoking hole. There's nothing left of that. That's, pretty soon you're going to see those mutants off of Mad Max driving through the trading floor, because that's about all that's going to be left of that. And the COMEX is having millions upon millions upon millions of ounces of silver delivered on the daily basis, something that's never happened before. The only reason that they haven't had a collapse of the precious metals market before now is because nobody ever stood for delivery. There was no need to. The whole reason they would allow for standing for delivery, which means actually taking the metal into your personal possession and storing it somewhere and having the cost of that security and all of that stuff that, cost a lot just to load, let's say, 2 tons of gold onto a truck and ship it safely and securely somewhere, and then store it safely and securely somewhere. So most people didn't do that. Most of these traders that trade precious metals never did that. They didn't need to, right? They knew that the metal, or they were reasonably assured that the metal was there to cover the paper contracts that they were handing each other back and forth. The truth is, over decades of time, the metal's not there. It's all gone. And those contracts are still out there for billions of ounces that don't exist. And there's a whole lot of banking that's based on that. JP Morgan is short 900 million ounces of silver. Every time silver goes up $1 from here, it costs JP Morgan 900 million. Think about that. Think about how scared somebody's got to be right now because they couldn't cover all of that short selling contracts in that amount of time. Ooh-wee. You're seeing it live. If you're watching it every day like I am, because that's what I do every day, is watch the cryptocurrency markets, the precious metal markets, and I run my publishing business. And I paint on the side because I'm a professional painter. So that's a lot of irons to have in the fire. You're right. So even so, I'm able to pay a lot of attention to what's going on, and it's been amazing. Silver, if you listen to these analyst projections, is going to go into the high triple-digit range. You're talking about like $500 to $700 an ounce is what some of these guys are talking about. And that's them doing just simple math on the side. Like, that's based on actual projections of where it should be if it were properly valued at this time with the ratio to gold. Because right now it's valued at like 40 to 1 to gold or something like that. It should be valued at 7 to 1, because that's how many pieces of silver you get up out of the ground for every one piece of gold, is 7. And that's being used in our technology on a daily basis. In fact, I heard this stat today. These data centers that are fueling our AI take somewhere around 300 metric tons of silver per center. That's a whole lot of silver, guys. And they have 5,000 of those planned for the United States right now. Takes around 30 ounces, 40 ounces of silver, something like that, for every cruise missile that we make. Imagine you get into war somewhere. Why do you think the United States just declared it a critical mineral? You're beginning to see the fissures, little cracks in the system of the fiat currency world, all about to go down. And we'll come right back to that after this break.
Great job, Jack. Great job. Hey, over the break in a couple weeks, if you want to get a group of people together to do like a cryptozoology year-end, that would be cool.
Oh, okay.
See if you can find some folks that would want to do that, and then we'll get them on. We'll still call it, PIA, but I'll title it as year-end cryptozoology, conference or whatever.
Sure, let me reach out to a few people, see if I can get some people on that are doing some current work right now. I know Robert Kreider is. In fact, he got a good picture of a Bigfoot just the other day that was staring down at him from a rock cliff.
Yeah, I don't know what Ken and the rest of them are up to, but I haven't heard anything from Ron in a long time, so.
Not me either. So I'm not sure what's going on in that direction, but I'm planning on doing some work out in the Black Hills this coming season.
Ooh.
Once this bad winter goes away.
That'd be kind of cool if we had some live feed from there from time to time if you have signal.
Absolutely. Black Hills is a good place. Not a lot of researchers in the Dakotas. So.
What I could even do too is I could set it up that if you have like a standing camera that's transmitting, I could run it through the stream and keep that rolling when I'm doing filler streams.
Cool.
And people would love that, I'm sure. Even if they're just watching nature, it'll be great.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So if you want to do that, that's fine. I'll hook you up with that, and then, if it's constantly going like that you can keep it going like that, you can come in in and out, the whole time. Like, hey, I got an update. I was around the corner of this one tree down in the grove.
Yeah, and I have night vision equipment now.
Yeah. I don't know if we can hook that to the camera or not, but that'd be kind of cool too. I've done ghost hunts and stuff like that on air, but I've never had anybody do a crypto trip.
Yeah, we should definitely plan that for this summer.
That I want to do that. I'll make time for that. If I'm not in court or if I'm not, I got some things going on. So, but between stuff that's family and stuff that's I'll make it happen one way or the other. Okay.
Cool. No, that'd be fun, especially if we got some real activity. That'd be cool, right?
Yeah.
I got a way of sort of bringing them in, so JC taught me. But if they're around,
yeah, no, I've been running a lot of like in between stuff with Marty Stauffer. It's Wild America, so that'll go right in with that because it's wild. Oh, Jack Carey Wild back. We'll call it something. I'll figure a title for it or something like that. If you get out there and got signal to do that,
that'd be awesome. Yeah, I would be totally down for that.
Yeah, and then you'd have anybody that comes to the streams, taking a look. And I wouldn't play music or anything like that, so I can even stream it to YouTube and some other places. We got less than 30 seconds, and then we'll be back.
Good.
Yeah. But that sounds fun. Nancy's got landed a big guest next week. She's got the great Brent Hamachek. So next Wednesday, 9 to 10
Great.
Eastern. Here's your countdown, Jack. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you are live and on the radio side right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, your tour guide to the Twilight Zone. I've got a face for milk cartons and a voice for smell-o-vision, and seriously, once upon a time, I was a sit-down comedian. So, there you go. Can you still see me, producer, up there?
Oh, yeah. See you good.
Mark? Okay.
Yeah.
You're cool.
Not, so, every now and then, if you move too much or too fast, it'll blur a little bit.
Groovy. All right. So, I wanted to look something up for you guys, and I thought I would see if I could find out here. I am looking up a speech by Woodrow Wilson, believe it or not. And it pertains to the main topic tonight that was given to us by Dick Algier over at Future Forecasting Group. So, and it makes quite an impact. So I wanted to read it. Comes from a speech he did in 1913, and it has to do with the Illuminati and the power structure of the Illuminati. So let's take a look here. If you go to like Goodreads or something like that, you'll be able to come up with the quote. And here it is. Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and of manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. That's some pretty scary words coming from an American president, right? You'll find it amazing then that this week, Dick Allgaier mentioned that they had targeted he kind of insinuated that they had targeted the inner workings of the Illuminati, and they really came by, and the Illuminati is an ancient, that was Joseph Weishaupt in Bavaria, and, a couple hundred years ago, and that was one little name, that one little arm of the so-called Illuminati used. So, Cliff High over at the Webbot calls them the name stealers. I think that's probably as good a name as any. They can also be called the Khazarian Mafia is a very good name for them. So the Khazarian Mafia goes back all the way to ancient times, and they make up certain bloodlines. And these bloodlines go all the way back to ancient Anunnaki lineage. And Dick Allgaier's group, Future Forecasting, were trying to determine if bankers controlled the world. That was the real target, the whole idea. And what they discovered was it wasn't actually the bankers that controlled the world. I know people are throwing eggs at the screen right now. They do too. They control the world. But no, they actually don't. Bankers themselves are being controlled. And you'd be shocked by how Dick Allgaier explains it. According to their targeting, and you have to keep in mind that these are the most prolific remote viewers on the planet, and they mainly spend their time doing cryptocurrency remote viewing, like predicting future price outcomes of cryptocurrencies. That's the whole point of their group, but every once in a while they do these side projects. And this was one of them, and he explains it that there are certain bloodlines on this planet that people born to those bloodlines are taught from a very early age in the mastery of all kinds of different disciplines. They are taught the same things that are taught in special forces. They are taught finance. They are taught contract law. They are taught ancient history and their blood lineage and how it goes back to the Anunnaki. They are taught all kinds of amazing knowledge. In fact, if you want to know what they're taught, all you have to do is read the Book of Enoch, because all of the same knowledge that the Book of Enoch says that the so-called Watchers taught their human offspring is what they're taught today. And that included, amazingly enough, him talking about them being taught sorcery. Well, what is sorcery, right? I had occasion to sort of become acquainted with a group of these people decades and decades ago in Denver. And some of the members of this group, which, for lack of a better word, we'll call them a offshoot of the priesthood of the Illuminati. That's really what they were. They actually taught me a lot of what their inner teachings were, and I was able to see how it all connected from kind of inside the room and outside the room. right? I was working as a writer for a magazine that researched ancient bloodlines, and specifically the Merovingian bloodline. And it was in the course of that I came across these people and then became acquainted with them. And over a course of about a 10-year period, I got a really good inside glimpse of how all of this works, right? So Dick Allgaier was talking about how these people are taught all of this. And yes, these are wealthy families, and there's a reason why they're wealthy, and that's because one lineage of them was the Templar Knights, and the Templar Knights invented banking, and banking is in its own way a form of sorcery because you basically make it up out of thin air and you profit from it. Cliff High over at the Webbot calls it Babylonian money magic, but in the end it is a form of sorcery. These people have mastered that, and they use bankers and banking as a tool by which to gain control. But the bankers themselves aren't the ones in control. Some of the bankers have a glimpse behind the scenes of what's really going on, but a lot of them don't. You're talking about the guys at the highest echelons, right? And it works like this, according to Allgaier and the Future Forecasting Group. Let's say you're a luminary of some kind. Let's say you're like Elon Musk, somebody like that, right? Somebody that's achieved a certain mastership of something that's of interest to them, that has an entrepreneur with a great idea that makes $100 billion, right? Or even 100 million. Because to hear the Future Forecasting Group tell it, these agents are actually in the thousands, right? And they're employed to do nothing more than what they do. They're employed in the banking industries and in the contract law industry and things like that in order to maintain control for the bloodlines themselves. So Allgaier says that if you're not in the bloodline, but you're one of these luminaries, and you basically, that's my security itching his fleas probably, then you will one day have a meeting with someone who presents themselves as being part of this group. And they'll have a very pleasant yet candid conversation. And they explain the rules, and they explain what you can get away with, and they explain what you can't get away with, more importantly. And they provide examples for the person they're talking to. And they explain that they do possess the mechanisms by which to apply the proper amount of pressure on any given person on this planet at any given time in order to achieve their goals and ends. Very interesting the way that works out, right? Well, working for this magazine that I did this writing for and coming across this group of people who are interested in the ancient Merovingian bloodline. And if you don't know who the Merovingians are, they are the ancient royal line of France. And in their day, they were worshipped when they were living. They were worshipped as god kings. They were said to possess magical powers. People would reach out and grab their robe and be healed instantly. one of the kings of the Merovingian dynasty was found buried, and when they found him, he was wearing a robe of 300 golden bees. That same robe was worn by Napoleon during his coronation as the Emperor of France. So you can see how important this was, this bloodline, this ancient bloodline. Now, this ancient bloodline, to make a very long story short, has an ancient tale that its founder, Meravi's mother, was swimming in the ocean and was impregnated by a Quinatar, Quintaur. The word never shows up in any literature ever again, other than in this mystery. I find it fascinating that we have an alien civilization in the ocean, and here is a tale of an ancient royal line where the mother's impregnated by a magical sea creature, and it gives rise to a royal lineage that is only half human, right? This ties into Dan Brown's whole idea of the royal bloodline of Christ and with Christmas. And it does so because in the south of France, there is an existing oral history of Jesus of Arimathea having arrived there on a boat, and he was Jesus's uncle. He arrived there on a boat with Jesus's so-called wife, Mary Magdalene, and their child, which was called Sarah the Egyptian, and today she's worshipped as the so-called Black Madonna of the southern part of France. You can Google all of this. It's all there. So all these are the bricks that make up this rabbit hole. You can use AI or, God forbid, Google or whatever you want to use to go through and look at each one of these bricks I'm mentioning, and they're all there. Okay. I'm not leading you astray at all. This is the rabbit hole. This is how weird this whole thing is, right? So, this whole lore exists, and it's believed that Mary Magdalene had a child, and she was called Sarah the Egyptian, and she was the daughter of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and she intermarried into the Merovingian royal line. That's fascinating, because when you look at the Bible and the book of Enoch, both of them show that Jesus was a direct lineal descendant of Noah, and Noah was the grandson of Enoch. It's Enoch who has the interaction with the Watchers. It's Enoch who witnesses them having children with human women and producing something that was only half human. And here you have a ancient Merovingian royal line saying that they're only half human and they have magical abilities. And here is a guy who's a direct lineal descendant of all of this, and he has magical abilities. Is any of this beginning to make some sense? Because the so-called Magi that showed up to the birth of Jesus were actually from Persia. And Magi is where the word magic comes from. And the Magi, even Kevin Costner on his new documentary, if you watched it on ABC the other night, talked about how they were magic practicing astrologers. And we'll get to what magic is and sorcery here in a minute. So we're to believe that a group of magic practicing astrologers that are sorcerers from Persia, not from Judea, not from the Jewish people, from Persia, actually went to go find the newborn king of the Jews. For them, no, it doesn't. The math doesn't add. And in the literature, and what these people told me was that the Magi actually went looking for their king, the king of the Magi. It was the Magi who were astrologers, who had the so-called star alignment prophecy, not the Jewish people. And it was the Magi who went to go find their king. And what happens later at the age of 13, when Jesus turns into a man and has a so-called bar mitzvah, he disappears from the Bible for 20 years. Look it up. He's gone for 20 years, not a single record of him at all. He shows back up at the age of 33. Guess how long it takes a Magi of Persia to train? Exactly 20 years. What a coincidence. There's a great book out there. It's written by a man named Dr. Morton Smith, who was a professor at Columbia University way back when Columbia actually educated people, and not the Columbia of today that does nothing but indoctrinate people into left-wing socialist ideology. But he wrote a great book called Jesus the Magician, in which he went back and showed actual parchments and inscriptions and everything, talking about how during his day Jesus was seen as a magician. He was seen as one of the Magi. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing, and goes right to the heart of it, right? Well, all of this ties into the Merovingian royal line, and therefore ties into the royal lineages of these Anunnaki people, the so-called Watchers that are in the Book of Enoch, who had children with humans, and then taught those children all of the forbidden secrets of the Anunnaki. That's what we're talking about. Those families are still there. And all of this culminates in the mystery of Rennes-le-Château, which is a village in the south of France. And there was a priest who moved there, and he renovated the church. And when he renovated the church, he removed two ancient Visigothic pillars out of it. And one of the pillars, he found encrypted parchments that were encoded. And then the other pillar, he found ancient genealogies that showed that the ruling royal lines of Europe were actually connected to these ancient Anunnaki bloodlines. And he went about contacting each one of these descendants of the Anunnaki, let's call them that, even the Archduke Ferdinand, for instance, was one of the people that went there. He went to Paris, became acquainted with the occult underground of Paris, and had a lot of famous luminaries of the day, like artists and entertainers, would end up showing up to his little villa in the south of France. A lowly Catholic priest that barely made a living, right? All of a sudden had millions of dollars by today's standards. And he got it by writing to all of these people that were part of these ancient bloodlines and telling them that he had discovered the tomb of one of their ancient Anunnaki. And that tomb is still in the south of France today. And I wrote a whole book about this. If you want to do a deep dive, it's called The Enoch Code. It actually has quite a following online and sells quite well on Amazon. So if you do want to support the show here, buy The Enoch Code, or one of my other books that's out there on the paranormal subject. I should take my good friend Billy Carson's lesson, and he said, Jack, always sell your book at the beginning of the show, not at the end. He's a smart guy. So anyway, Dick Algier and his group got a glimpse behind the curtain, right? Using psychic abilities of how these people operate, how they maintain control, what they're taught. And one of those things is sorcery, described in the book, Not Sorcery. Well, what did I discover with my interaction with this group, who was an offshoot of the priesthood of so-called Illuminati? That what they really were protecting was a body of really potent techniques that trick and or allow the human mind to perform magical abilities. In other words, what they believed and what the remote viewers also came to find completely independently under laboratory conditions is the fact that everyone has a basic psychic ability, that there's this thing called the liminal threshold that separates consciousness from our subconscious. That is a safety mechanism, because if you could just trip the mechanism anytime you wanted to, it would be pure chaos taking place. At its heart lies a body of techniques that allow you to bypass the liminal threshold to achieve communication with your subconscious mind, thereby allowing it to perform psychic functioning in our materium. Psychic functioning to such a degree that you can bend probability to your will. And when you see it up close, when you see it work up close the way that I did, it's like watching a series of beneficial coincidences just occur for that particular practitioner. Amazing to see. But something that was repeatable. That's what these people are taught. And it's something that's been guarded by the mystery schools for eons of time. And I'll end with this. In the so-called disclosure movement that's taking place, one thing has been totally clear. Time and again, we're hearing that these craft are controlled psionically. In other words, they're controlled through psychic means. Here's a group of people who have eons old abilities to control their psychic abilities, and who have these little offshoot groups, these little priesthoods out there, these little occult priesthoods who are actively looking for other people who have those heightened psychic abilities. And I think that even our intelligence community are embedded within them. So that's tonight's rabbit hole, guys. Join me next week and we'll go down another weird one. I will see you then. Stay tuned for Nancy Planeta and the Vixen Vault.